Welcome to the Tekitok podcast, where we embark on a journey through the ever-evolving realm of SAP and IT operations, automation, artificial intelligence, and cloud technologies. Whether you're an IT professional, a business leader, or simply curious about emerging technologies and industry insights, our episodes will be your compass in navigating this dynamic landscape with real-world experiences. Join us as we demystify complex concepts, explore innovative trends, and engage in stimulating dialogue with industry experts to empower you with insights that matter. The views expressed by our hosts and guests are their own and do not reflect the opinions of their respective companies. The producer of this Tekitok podcast assumes no responsibility for any public content, ideas, or recommendations shared.
All right, so welcome to Tekitok. We have an episode today with our guest here, SUSE, and we are actually live in Las Vegas 2024 at SAP Insider event. So welcome. We have today myself, I'm kind of the host, but this is my part-time job, side job. So as a host, my job is to actually bring our guests who are in the technology area. SAP was the core, but really we can talk about everything, AI, anything you feel relevant in today's trend based on what you experience, your customer experience. So today we have Brent and we have Sherry, and they're both from SUSE, and we're going to bring different topics to the discussion points, share some stories about customer success and why SUSE for SAP or SUSE in general is a significant enterprise Linux distribution and also solution, right? So I'll let you guys maybe introduce real quick your
Certainly.
role.
Absolutely. Brent Schroeder.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the CTO for SUSE. So I've been here for about 6 years and spend most of my time on the road and meeting with customers and partners and so forth. So yeah, it's
Great.
great
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Thank you, Brent. So CTO, that means I can ask any technology question, right?
Yeah, Chief Travel Officer.
Yeah. I like that. Lots of points. And then Sherry?
Hi, my name is Sherry Yu. I'm a Global Alliance Director focusing on SAP Solutions. I've been with SUSE for about 4 years, but I have been working on SAP for more than 15 years. Nice. So in my recent years, my focus is on SAP HANA migration and also cloud migration.
So lots of stories to tell, huh? All of those are memorable.
Yeah, I have
stories.
seen some customer challenges.
Okay. So starting with maybe some. I know this is SAP Insider. We talk a lot SAP, and they talk about success stories. So maybe you can share SUSE for SAP. I'm a fan, by the way. I've been using it for internal and external customers. So let's start with like some recent stories where you think SUSE made a big difference for customer. Maybe a large workload, maybe a very critical type scenario where some success stories you can share about recent experiences with customers on SAP SUSE.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, here at SAP Insider, I just did a session yesterday using a customer case study. One of the specialties that SUSE provides to the customer, SAP HANA customer, is to reduce downtime. For SAP as a mission critical database. And one story I told in the session got some attention, and some customer came to me afterwards. So I'm going to repeat here.
Okay, that's good. This new audience.
Right, new solution also. And so for SAP HANA, when from time to time, right, index server could crash for various reasons. And for the very large database, the dying process is very long because index server needs to drain the memory to a point that it can trigger a cluster to perform the takeover. A little bit more technical, right? But I try to stay at high level. But this dying process is too long. On the customer who reported the problem, it was on a 24 terabyte.
Wow.
Database, and the dying process took more than 1 hour. And the SLA didn't meet their requirement. It represents over 1 million business loss for 1 hour downtime. So they came to SUSE and asked, whether you can help us. So within several months, we create a workaround. So we use a hook to proactively monitor the HANA state change. If it's related to an index server, we don't wait for the index server process to die completely. We just kill the database right away, then trigger the takeover under the conditions, right? All the checks, right? If a condition allows, then takeover happens. Because a HANA system replication takeover, right, in general happens within several minutes. So as the end result, the recovery time is reduced from more than 1 hour to minutes.
Oh yes, that makes it even different.
And
right.
this is a new solution that a lot of customers are not yet aware of. But from SUSE side, we are now recommending this as the default configuration for scale up and also scale out.
Oh wow, that's exciting because I run a startup and we talked about fail fast. You're gonna fail fast. Don't fail slow because you're just burning money and you're gonna fail anyway. So fail fast and learn and we move on, right?
Exactly.
So this is a classic example. That's great. So Brent, now take an example from Sherry. So something like that when a customer is asking for what is traditionally an open source type solution provided in an enterprise landscape, how does that problem then translate to what you do from a technology? How do you take that and feed it back into, let's say, engineering and improvements for these? It sounds simple, but I know for any large enterprise companies, this is not like a simple thing. Which is like, I want this and I'm done. Like right. Developer could do it, but how do you do that?
Well, a couple of things on that context. One, just to build on what Sherry was saying and how SUSE approaches the whole SAP space, is we spend a lot of time with our customers. It's not like we view ourselves as an operating system vendor. We view ourselves as the SAP solution in that context and take some responsibility for how the SAP environment is behaving, and anything that we can do to help a customer's environment, we absolutely want to do that. Oftentimes, we can take action in the operating system. Sometimes it takes collaboration with SAP, so our on-site work with them is very valuable in that context, because then we can work together with them to come up with a solution that ultimately helps the customer. All right, and to your point on open source, everything we've got is open source. We work in that community, and we'll bring forth what we view as value adds onto our Linux environment and offer that as part of the whole open source solution. So everybody can still get access to it, but we deliver it as part of our overall solution.
Because I feel like the HCA portion, at least from my experience, the SAP High Availability and HANA in particular, all of these, the cluster foundation, right, OCF, and so there's a lot of discussion around how it should behave. At what point, like you mentioned, kill the index. So that sounds very dramatic, but it's in order to like kill it and make it fast, and so you don't have a loss of an hour, something like that. But it can get into, if we're talking about upstream, downstream on an open source discussion, like who owns this and does it get back into the, the whole foundation side of things, or is it just this is specific to SUSE, and so that discussion there I have experienced from the customer standpoint. It gets a little bit frustrating, and they want to work with vendors and partners who kind of like, well, this is a business need. It needs to be accelerated. It's not like a traditional 6 months before I'll get this agent update or something like that, right? So what's your experience kind of like having to do with the foundation, but then also having a business focus there?
I'll do my first part and then let Sherry add to it, because many of the things that we're doing is we put together that solution. They don't live, there's not a natural home for it.
Right.
Because it's not something that we're adding to Linux. It's not part of the Linux distribution itself, so you wouldn't put it upstream in Linux. So there's not a foundation home for it. So we'll be the home for that and write the extensions or the add-ons and host them ourselves. And we have no problem doing that, and then there's no time delay.
That's
in
good.
delivering that. It's whenever we can put it together. So.
And also the flexibility allows us to prioritize, and we are very customer-centric and problem driven. So use this fast index server solution as an example when customer raise that a requirement, right, to enhance the solution. And our engineering, because this is coming from a very large customer with a mission critical workload, our engineering was able to prioritize the solution among other tasks. That's why the solution can be developed and released in several months, other than over a year.
Right.
Yeah, that's how that's a very good demonstration on our customer-driven and result-driven mentality. And SUSE is a developer of the SAP HA solutions. And as Brent said, we always start with a real customer challenge. And then we work with SAP to think about the solution, then create a prototype. And at SUSE, we also have a customer advisory board that consists of world's largest SAP workloads. Those customers are sometimes the early adopters. They are willing to test our solution and give feedback, which is well incorporated into our final product. That's why the final product that customer receive is already well tested, validated, and already incorporating all the feedbacks right from those large customers.
So now I know this beyond just like SUSE and other distro, but now you're talking SAP and cloud. You have the all the big hyperscalers. So I can imagine when you say the customer council, how often is there actually an official biannual meet, quarter? There is actually a group that actually meets on a regular basis and talk about what are some of the upcoming things that we think prioritize that help SUSE put into its roadmap.
And specific to SAP, so it's not just a general topic. It's get SAP stakeholders together and hear their feedback and then give them our insight into where we're going and what's next.
Is this going to be like SUSECon type of thing? Or is that?
Yes, before COVID, we have a real meeting at SUSECon.
Right.
The real customer council meeting. And even the good thing is they are not meeting with business people. They are meeting with the core engineers to gather their feedback. That's why our engineering is so close to customers and so close to the real challenges.
Right. So now we talk about these mechanics of how we work with SAP, but from a CTO standpoint, help our kind of followers understand what are some of the big portfolio solution that SUSE produces for SAP. I know there's things like patching or some of these. Could you talk a little bit about what are the suite of things that you guys offer as a mainstream SAP Linux vendor, right?
Yeah, as just from an SAP targeted standpoint, we've got a Linux distribution, one of our Linux distributions, SLES, SUSE Linux Enterprise Server, for SAP.
Right.
That brings together different products that we would that a customer may normally deploy, but they're brought together in an optimized manner. So it's targeted at we know what needs to be there for to optimize an SAP deployment. So it comes pre-built with that and with the additional tools necessary for that. And then we've got an additional project that we offer with our SAP environment called Trento. That
cool name, by the way. Sounds so.
That brings in the ability to deploy and monitor best practices.
Okay.
So that you have better insight into the whole of how your SAP environment is running versus trying to monitor all the different pieces and assemble the insight yourself.
Okay. So this is Trento, something that is, I imagine it's on Git or something. Let's say a customer would. Okay. All right. Good.
But it's also an official supported component as part of SLES for SAP subscription. And how the reason we have a separate product, right, SLES for SAP versus regular SLES just to focus on SAP solution is it allows us to add new solutions independently.
Okay.
And because we move at a very fast pace, right? For example, the fast index server I mentioned, it's when it's available, it's just added into Slash for SAP. So on the customer end, we also do a lot of education because we have some long-term customer running on SUSE, right, for over a decade, and they are happy, and they may just keep the environment the way it is. So very often we also help customers to become aware of our new solutions, and we help customers to maximize the value of their subscriptions.
Okay.
And we run webinars. We just did one with Microsoft last year.
I see.
Yeah, and the philosophy behind that is, as once you help customer maximize the value of the product they already paid for, right? You increase customer satisfaction and also the stickiness.
Now, so with the, let's say, SUSE for SAP, for instance, now that not like the old days, we just basically run it on-prem, VMware, whatever base, and or physical. Now with all the hyperscalers out there, I'm sure you guys partner with all of them, right? Is there anything different that you approach, let's say an AWS versus a GCP versus an Azure, or maybe an Oracle Cloud, whatever it is, from what SUSE for SAP does in deploying that onto that hyperscaler? Is there any difference? Are we talking about 100% pure same code?
I think what you're asking from a code standpoint, it's the same, right? We don't have any material differences there. From the best practices standpoint, can be quite different. How do you deploy it and run it in the cloud? I was talking about this yesterday in my talk. Is a lot of times I think administrators look if they've got a VMware environment on-prem, and they say, well, it's virtual, right? It's a virtual cloud. And expect it to behave the same, right? If I go to Azure or Amazon or Google, that's just virtual resources, right? But there's really a lot of variation from a best practices standpoint. How do you secure it? How do you optimize it? Are very important to know exactly where you're going to deploy it, so you can take the nuances of each environment into account.
So that being said, every cloud vendor claims their so-called SLA for cloud availability, and obviously SAP customer care about uptime, performance, and all that stuff. What does SUSE do in terms of from a SLA standpoint? Do you guys have some, we're talking about before, maybe observability, insights, and of course when you deploy you have this best practice configuration and you configure to some best practice, but let's say that's up and running. Does SUSE have some insights into how it's running, or is that only from a support that when the customer reaches out and say something's up?
So we, in the past, right, there was like issue-driven support approach, but more and more we found in many cases a major outage is the result of accumulated minor issues that could have been remediated as early as possible. This is a philosophy behind Trento, to help customer increase insight into the SAP landscape and remediate the minor issues.
Right.
So within the Trento, the customer can get the overview of the healthiness of the entire SAP landscape, and they will be able to navigate within that single pane of glass, navigate to the critical issues that the Trento raises. And Trento also gives the root cause, the remediation suggestions. We have a plan to even automate the remediation. That's something on the roadmap, not right now. But when in its current state, when a ratio is raised, it would give the reason, what is wrong, and we also give the reference to the official documentation on why this issue is raised. So customer would know that all the checks and the validation is based on the best practice. And we also work with AWS, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud to build in some cloud infrastructure checks, because especially for cluster, it's a integration with the cloud infrastructure, with Stoney's device, file system, etc. That's why it's a whole system approach, and we want to make sure that our customers is taken care of not only at the operating system level, but at the relevant infrastructure level.
Okay. That's now when we also talk about like cloud. Since we're at an SAP conference, I can't stop but ask the RISE question. So has it changed the way you would see how SAP customers deploy SUSE for SAP? When now they're saying that, well, if we go into RISE, and there's not a lot that we have control over because SAP is managing it on our behalf. So things like live patching, I know that SUSE is a strong point as well. It's something that allow customers to, okay, so maybe Trento finds that there is a security vulnerability, maybe, I'm just making it up, but let's assume there's something that there's a patch for it, there's a CVE, and the customer need to understand what system this belongs to, how important it is, and when to patch it. But now that patching is not done by the customer anymore, because you can't recommend it to the customer directly. So under the RISE, what do you see a lot of changes that how SUSE is encountering in this kind of new world of how SAP runs?
So in the public edition, right, your statement is true. But I just had a good conversation with an expert from SAP Insider, and in the private edition, the patching is excluded task, which means it's on customer.
Also, customers still have to.
Right. So that's why we can think of ways to help customers carry out the best practices that we would have. It's just a matter of helping customers get familiar with this new setup on RISE and find out a way how to integrate with SUSE. For example, SUSE Manager, the patching solutions, and but on the live patching, and also that's a very good point. We can also find ways to raise the awareness, because live patching can be executed through the SUSE Manager. So potentially, I see SUSE Manager could become. Maybe we can come up with a product called SUSE Manager for SAP RISE.
Oh, wow, there you go. You heard it here first. But it's an interesting question, because now if the SAP customer is ultimately responsible for patching vulnerability, and there's a patch available from SUSE, but it has to come through SUSE Manager or whatever, like who actually, because the customer has no access to the OS, right? We understand RISE is kind of like SAP manages the infrastructure and customer manages, the SAP processes and operations. So this is an interesting question. We don't have to solve it here, but I'm kind of absorbing this SUSE Manager. Can you talk a little bit how much of your team's time spent in SUSE Manager as a product roadmap, and how does that enhance the customer's kind of journey to this whole enterprise level management of SUSE?
Yeah, for SUSE Manager is independent of SAP, and we continue to drive its capability and function. And actually, it's probably the best kept secret of SUSE, because so much of the market doesn't realize that it exists. So for those that aren't familiar with SUSE Manager, SUSE Manager is our Linux environment management solution, and it's not tied strictly to SUSE Linux.
Right.
So SUSE Manager can manage any Linux to the same degree of functionality, from deployment and lifecycle management. So in addition to SLES, we can manage RHEL and CentOS, or what was CentOS, and Ubuntu, OEL, etc., Amazon. So if you've got a third-party Linux out there, it can manage it. And one of the things that this brings value to us in their SAP environment for production mission critical, and then maybe they run some CentOS in another environment. Well, we can bring a unified management strategy to all of their Linux environment. And
So just let me interrupt a little bit. But so SUSE Manager definitely can manage other distro for sure. I know that. How does that then play with like the hyperscalers? Because all of them try to have, it's like AWS have System Manager and all these other things, right? Is there a roadmap that SUSE Manager plays into that? Like I would have my SUSE Manager, but shows up in AWS or Azure as a kind of a managed instance, if you will. I mean, if you know what I mean.
not fully.
So if
you're
I'm
talking about a manager of managers.
Well, if I'm, let's say I'm
standpoint?
Azure customer and I'm not in RISE, I'm my private cloud is in Azure, and I have SAP, but SUSE Manager is currently a VM that I deploy and I connect all my SAP systems and get updates from its channel. But is there a SUSE Manager equivalent in Azure where it's already a marketplace solution, if you will, and they just spin it up and you see it in the Azure console, it's in SUSE Manager and it's doing its thing, as opposed to that would be a PaaS offering, like platform as a service, rather than an IaaS, infrastructure as a service.
No, we don't do that today. We're working on making SUSE Manager available through the marketplaces, but it'll be deployed as an instance and then managed by the customer in that case. So we don't have any plans to SaaSify SUSE Manager at this time.
Okay.
Just from a market demand standpoint.
But I know SUSE Manager has APIs, right? I mean, we can make API calls and do
absolutely.
Okay, right, good. So one more thing on aspects with SAP customers, it's been very slow. We notice, especially on things like containers, things like that. I know SUSE is big on containers. It's the bigger SUSE, not just SAP. Have you seen any of that translate to some SAP customers' use of
the
containers?
Yeah, so most recently, SAP released Edge integration cell. That's a containerized application. So SUSE Rancher, the Kubernetes management platform, is one of the first to be supported. Managing the fleet. Okay. And behind the scene, our engineering is working closely with SAP.
Okay, good. Now, on SUSE, I know also there are things like integration with, let's say, Grafana and other things for. Explain to me where all this fits into, what would an SAP customer running SUSE for SAP, what are they doing from the tooling perspective beyond running the OS and patching the OS, and etc. Where does some of this stuff comes into play?
You want to comment on that?
Yeah, so you mentioned the Grafana, right? So we use Grafana, Prometheus and Grafana as the monitoring solution. They are bundled as part of SUSE Manager. Okay.
But how do you see that uptake with customers? Are they actually leveraging it? Is it overlapping with Solution Manager, for instance, right?
So Prometheus Grafana development are also open source development. So when we developed a monitoring module, it can also be adopted by other technologies. So my impression is some of the cloud vendor leveraged our development as well.
Okay. Now, going one step further, if you're doing AI integration, if customers saying like, okay, I want to use the SAP, but what's your AI play? How does this, maybe I want to have this base, but then run some additional workload on. So how does SUSE work with the whole AI right now? Is there anything specific you guys can talk without disclosing too much?
Most we can't. So I'll just going to talk a little bit about, from a industry infrastructure standpoint. We support and work closely with NVIDIA and other vendors. NVIDIA obviously today is a huge lead and footprint in the industry, and we enable it with our operating system and the environments and support it both in a traditional VM model or bare metal model as well as a containerized model. And we're putting together kind of plans, and I'll just say, stay tuned for SUSECon.
Okay.
Gives you a reason to come, to come to SUSECon.
SUSE for, not SUSE for SAP, but SUSE for AI, SUSE for NVIDIA, something like that, right? Because we always think about, okay, you know, there's a CPU, there's a general purpose, or it's going to be very specific workload, GPU, so it's always interesting because SAP in the beginning supported things like, you know, you heard of things like Titanium, you know, that sort of different chip base, and over time it kind of some disappeared. But given that where AI is going in the GPU, that's why my question is like, are there?
Yeah, we do see a lot of customers. You know, they're common, right? So I mean, the customers got SAP running in their environment, and they're deploying AI. You know, very common scenarios that I'm seeing today, and today the connection between those is very loose. The connection really is just at the data level, right? Because AI is all about the data. We've got a lot of customers that are either already have deployed or are planning to deploy AI at the edge. And so you can imagine we'll play very heavily there, particularly in the inferencing side, so that, you know, as customers want to deploy edge and they're gathering the data from the edge, you know, we're enabling that with our edge solutions, and making it easier to connect and manage to endpoint devices that may have that data, and then help bring that back into the environment. And then we're looking, you know, as we work closely with our customers and understand how they're using it, you know, what can we do from a solution standpoint to improve that, make it easier to use, make it more secure, which is one of the big issues and concerns customers have with edge deployments. And so that's areas that we're currently working on and looking at.
Exciting. Now, one thing I want to ask, specifically around SAP customers, we know 2027 is near, not here yet, but there was a recent survey that had reviewed customers that were either on ECC or still very old version of S4 that has not, you know, taken the next step to go to latest and greatest. Something like only 30% or something, or 25% of the total customer base. So is SUSE doing anything in the space where you guys are helping providing customers, for lack of a better term, a migration assessment to have their SAP workload running on SUSE, maybe on VMware or somewhere, to modernize, migrate, to maybe take advantage of AI as part of that whole roadmap or whatever? Is there something there that maybe a service organization from SUSE that's doing this?
So from service perspective, we have health check. So we can help customers get ready for the HANA migration. And on the migration side, we don't do the actual migration by ourselves. That's not our core business. But we help customers to plan the future architecture. And they were reviewing their HA and the DR solution, and I spotted that they are still referring to an old architecture by using HANA chained replication, right, as the DR solution. So I was able to point the customer to our latest DR solution using the multi-target HANA system replication. Yeah, so that's a typical example where SUSE can add value.
Okay. So you kind of be in that conversation, make sure it's the right architecture.
Right, make sure they are adopting the latest and the best, and also we keep customer in the loop on our roadmap development. So right now, while we are talking, we are developing the next generation HANA system replication solutions. So stay tuned at SUSE Con.
Yeah. So one thing about this migration we talked about also is this on the other side, commercial side of say licensing. Is there anything different if a customer is running SUSE SAP today on-prem on let's say a physical or VMware going into cloud, into a VM in a hyperscaler?
Yeah. So we have multiple consumption models. Customer can choose based on their needs, and we have a significant committed discount if a customer commit to 1 year or 3 year consumption of the hourly pricing.
So it's pretty much, if I was to do this as a kind of a migration assessment thing, and I'm proposing you need to get to the cloud quickly and then modernize while you're there, typical lift and shift discussion. And so the licensing is pretty much one-to-one, is that what I understand? Is that right?
You mean compared to the on-prem pricing?
Yeah. So I'm just lifting, maybe I have 20 SAP system, 50 VMs, and I'm gonna do same size, put them under virtual hyperscaler. The licensing kind of goes kind of like that.
Can bring it with them.
Right, they can bring. Yeah, if they, for example, if they have a 3-year subscription, there is still 1 year remaining. Yeah, they can bring the subscription to the cloud.
That's good. Because I know customers today who have asked us, for instance, like if I want to use SUSE Manager, manage my licensing and the whole subscription, update, the patching, all that stuff. How does that work when I want to move that to, let's say, my hosted environment in Azure, for instance? I know it goes to RISE, then the whole thing is it's a different discussion. But I think I understand what you're saying now. I think that just a straight carry on of what your BYOL. Okay, that's it.
SUSE Manager doesn't discern where it's running.
Okay,
it doesn't care.
Okay,
so it can manage
that makes it easier. One less
target
thing to
anywhere.
work on. Okay, good. Well, it's been great to talk to you guys. Anything you want to cover? Next big thing? I know SUSECon, you keep saying, but Sapphire. Anything else? Ace, are you guys some part of some regular industry SAP? Maybe on a once a month cadence of doing some event that is coming up. That's interesting. And you are a frequent traveler already, so.
Yeah, I'm already booked for Sapphire, so we'll be there.
Okay.
Same here.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, regionally we have ASAC event. We are active participants.
Now that reminds me, because we're talking about a live person event like Sapphire and stuff like that, but we used to remember talking about SAP and everybody saying that we work very close with SAP and we have people involved and is that still relevant though in today's world? Yes, you can collaborate but online, pretty much Teams meeting all the time, but is there such a thing as a Waldorf kind of SUSE sitting next to an SAP person?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Continuing that and there's definitely something to be said with sitting next to somebody.
Okay.
The relationship that you build and the ad hoc conversations you can have and just a whiteboard session really quick definitely contributes to the value we bring and how we work together.
That's good. So. That's good to know. Maybe next episode we're doing Waldorf. Make sure it's not winter.
The hobby is good.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.